All right, get in loser, we're going healing. You are not overachieving, you're just scared of feeling worthless. Let's talk about that version of you that just never stops, that just never rests. The girl that keeps her calendar full. You only get self-worth by how much you're able to achieve. Like productivity basically became your self-worth. You feel guilty when you rest. And when things slow down, you may find yourself panicking because, you're like, okay, what now? Like, what do I do with all this time on my plate? Now, there's nothing wrong with having high standards and having high goals. There's a very fine line, I feel, between being driven and ambitious and working from a place of trauma. You're using working and you're using achievement as a coping mechanism. Because when you're sat still, when it gets quiet and nobody's around you and you're not doing anything, you're not filling up your time or your schedule with anything, that stillness feels too loud because then that brings up feelings of feeling unworthy. Nobody talks about why you're doing that. Somewhere along the line, you learned that if I'm not useful, then I'm worth nothing. You don't chase success because you actually want success, because you think that it fulfills you, but you actually chase success because it's the thing that finally makes you feel like you're enough. Here's the thing with achieving. No matter the things that you achieve in life, they are never going to make you feel enough. They're always going to keep you wanting more and like asking for more. Mo Gaudet was actually talking about this in an interview where he was saying like the more that you chase and the more that you feed your ego, the more that you try to become like more beautiful, more rich, more this, more that, having the best car, having the best house, the more that you feed it, unfortunately, the sadder that you will feel. Let's dive even deeper. This mindset usually started from much more earlier. It's the thought that you had to earn love. These things, as I was saying in my previous video, they are literally like your birthright. You were literally born with those things, like for the sole reason that God has created you. If God created you, then He must have seen you worthy, then He must have seen you beautiful, and then He must have seen you valuable. Somewhere along the line, we just go through some trauma and then we start to see our value or our worth in these things that we chase. Maybe you had to earn love, through school, like through grades and stuff like that. Maybe it was through behavior. Maybe it was about being the good child. Maybe love was not given to you unconditionally, and this is why you had to always perform in order to receive that love. Maybe your parents only showed up for you when you had achieved something. So now you are chasing a familiar feeling from your childhood. You chase all of these milestones like they are basically going to fix you. I hate to say it, but they won't. And you wonder why it feels so lonely and you feel so empty after achieving them. And why every achievement always leaves you feeling hungry for the next one. It doesn't boil down to the fact that, you're trying to build a life. It actually boils down to the fact that I don't want this feeling of unworthiness to ever come up again. This is why I'm gonna do everything to keep myself busy and to always keep achieving and to always be the best and to always be on top, just so that you don't feel those feelings again, just so that these feelings do not resurface again. And like I used to be this type of person that was constantly achieving and was constantly being productive, and I never allowed myself to rest. I never ever allowed myself to have like more sleep than I should be getting, because again, this hustle culture tells you this idea like if you want to be successful, you have to like sacrifice your health and you have to sacrifice your sleep. Never like rest, never like sit and watch TV, never like take vacations, never take weekends off. I used to literally fill up my schedule up to the brim. Like as much as I was so busy during the week with my corporate job, there were some days that I'd be working like over 12 hours a day, and yet I realized that even on the weekends I would also be filling up my weekend rather than taking them as a recovery. And so I was kind of like almost punishing myself. I was just not allowed to rest. I just never allowed myself to have that me time to just sit and exist and do nothing basically. And if I wasn't doing any of those things, I would just feel like not useful. And when I did decide to rest, it just made me feel very lazy. And here's the thing. Sometimes it's not goals that you're chasing, but rather reassurance that you matter, that you are seen, that you are chosen and loved and accepted. That you're enough without doing the most, even if you did nothing but breathe during the day. So you do not need to hustle anymore in order to matter. You don't need to constantly be improving in order to feel like you're fitting in. Take a minute to pause this video if you feel like you need that to sink in. It's very easy, as a generation that we're literally built on survival rather than feeling, to build our entire identity around achieving, to build our entire identity identity around doing. What happens when you can no longer do that? What then happens when your body is too burnt out to work? What happens when your brain literally cannot think straight anymore and cannot concentrate on anything anymore because of brain fog? What happens when your body is craving so much sleep and you're not giving it the rest that it needs in order to reset for the next day? What happens when your nervous system is literally like begging for help and you're just not giving it the safety, the feeling of safety that it needs? What happens then? How are you going to be able to sustain that any longer? You need to ask yourself, who are you without the grind? And who are you without the image that you're building? Who are you without the hard work? Who are you without your goals? Remember that you are a freaking human. You are not a robot. You're not a machine. You are not AI. You deserve to exist, to simply just exist. You don't need to always constantly perform in order to feel like you fit in this earth. You already fit in because God already chose to create you and chose to place you on this earth. So you already matter and you're already worthy without doing all these things. This is just what hustle culture has taught you. I want you every once in a while to just take a day off without taking a day off to catch up on life, okay, not to get ahead, but rather to literally just sit and lay in bed and still tell yourself that you're valuable, even while doing so. Stop defining yourself by your output. Stop defining your worth by the amount of things that you're able to tick off your check boxes. Start noticing your worth in literally just existing without listening to the people that always try to tell you that you're lazy and that you're not worth much because you are not successful at your age. Or when you want to build real self-worth, you don't necessarily build it from doing things all the time. That's never gonna give you that feeling. The feeling of self-worth is only gonna be achieved when you are doing less. When you are just sitting in the quiet, not doing much, you are going to see your value and feel your value by simply just existing. You will realize it when you do less, not when you do more. So you're not overachieving. You were just coping at a time where you needed to cope, you needed to survive. But now it's not about surviving anymore. It's about living. When you're ready to let go of that hustle culture and that coping mechanism and you're ready to heal, only then you can start to see your own worth by not doing anything. Because, I've been there, done that. Coming from a person that was burnt out for literally like a year, I was under extreme like periods of stress. I was just so exhausted. Every day I'd wake up, I would just not be able to do like the simplest of tasks because my nervous system was so damaged and was so dysregulated. I was not able to function normally. And this is when I had to quit my corporate job. So I really get it, how exhausted you might be feeling right now, how you're chasing peace, but you just don't know who you are without the pressure. So it's really about rewiring your brain and kind of like rewriting the narrative for yourself that rest does not equal weakness. Peace is power. Rest is power. Your worth was never meant to be earned like a pay slip or a paycheck that you have at the end of every month. It was already yours. You were already born with it. It was literally your birthright, even on the days that you do nothing. And even when you get it wrong, and even when you disappoint people, and even when you aren't, the most extraordinary person, you are still enough. So stop coping and start living, and finally give that inner child inside of you what they have been neglected of, all of the unconditional love that they were craving, and never allow anybody to convince you otherwise, that you don't deserve it unless you're doing something.